burning villages, columns of civilians driven from their homes at gunpoint, killings witnessed and recorded by Allied officers, American diplomats, and international relief workers. In May 1919, Greek forces landed at Smyrna, modern-day Izmir, under the protection of Allied warships. The First World War had just ended. The Ottoman Empire was collapsing, and Greece, backed by British Prime Minister Lloyd George, saw its chance to claim the lands it called the Megali Idea, the Great Idea, a vision of Greek presence stretching deep into Anatolia. What followed over the next 3 years would be one of the most thoroughly documented humanitarian disasters of the early 20th century. Within hours of landing, violence broke out against Ottoman soldiers and civilians in the city. The Inter-Allied Commission of Inquiry, set up by the very powers that authorized the Greek landing, concluded in its October 1919 report that Greek troops had committed acts of violence, looting, and murder. French Prime Minister Clemenceau, presenting the findings to the Allied Council on the 8th of November 1919, stated in the official minutes that the conduct of the Greeks had been, in his exact words, abominable, and the reports kept coming. Greek forces pushed inland. Villages with Muslim populations across western Anatolia were burned repeatedly during the advance and during the retreat. The Yalova Peninsula massacres of 1920 and 1921, documented in Allied reports, described the killing of thousands of Turkish civilians in the Gemlik and Yalova region. Specific towns, specific dates, recorded in official Allied documents that remain accessible in archives to this day. The testimonies are relentless. Survivor accounts, Allied field reports, and diplomatic cables describe scenes of civilian displacement and killing across dozens of towns and villages. These aren't rumors. They're specific dates and specific places, recorded in official documents that traveled from Anatolia to the highest levels of power in Europe. By 1920, the Greek advance was at its deepest. Large numbers of Anatolian Muslims had been displaced or killed. The International Committee of the Red Cross documented the use of labor battalions under the Greek occupation. Men conscripted and deployed under conditions the Red Cross found troubling enough to record and report. Then the tide turned. Turkish nationalist forces under Mustafa Kemal regrouped, pushed back. By 1922, the Greek army was in full retreat, and the documentation shows the retreat left destruction across hundreds of kilometers of Anatolian territory. American relief workers who had been in the region throughout the occupation described scenes of civilian devastation that went far beyond the effects of conventional military combat. And then came Smyrna, September 1922. The city that had once been the crown jewel of Aegean civilization, Greek, Armenian, Turkish, Jewish communities living side by side for centuries, was consumed by fire. Hundreds of thousands of refugees were trapped on the waterfront. Allied ships sat in the harbor as the city burned. What happened in those days, and who bore responsibility, remains one of the most contested questions in the historiography of the entire conflict. The events in Anatolia between 1919 and 1922 are documented in Allied military records, Red Cross archives, American diplomatic cables, and the official report of an international commission established by the powers who authorized the campaign in the first place. Villages were burnt. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were displaced, and then the world moved on. If you know more about these events, sources, documents, family histories, leave a comment. And if this kind of history matters to you, subscribe. There is more waiting to be told.